Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I am one of those aforementioned CPG guys. My name is Peter V.S. Bond. I'm also the Vice President of Retail Strategy at Power Reviews. And as always, on this journey, I am joined by my co-host. He is an e-commerce luminary. He is an entrepreneur. He's got a lot of knowledge in that head. He is the Ralph to my Potsy, the Shrek to my Donkey, the Starsky to my Hutch, and kind of like Ernie, Bert, and Elmo, he's so famous he goes by only one name. Please join me in welcoming my co-host at the plate, Sri. Hey, Sri, how you doing?
Aptly said at the plate because we've got a friendly Dodgers-Yankees rivalry going on, and these days I don't say much about the Yankees given the Rays are our daddy. But it's a 60-game season, and the playoffs have a different format this year. Pleasure to be with you on the show, Peter. We will welcome our guest in a second. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Sri. And before we get to our guest, let me remind our audience that, as always, if you want to find any of our content, the podcast audios, which are available on 15 platforms, the videos, which we post on YouTube, our LinkedIn page where we have additional content, Instagram, Twitter. I don't think we've done anything else beyond that. I don't think we're in Snapchat or Pinterest yet, but we may have to do that, Sri. Maybe a little TikTok. I don't know.
Maybe TikTok's the new one.
Maybe TikTok. In any event, please find that at cpgguys.com. And if you like what you see and what you hear, would you mind going to Apple and actually giving us a rating on our podcast there? You can get there by going to tinyurl.com/Apple CPG podcast. So Sri, let's get to the heart of what we're here today. We have a great guest. We both know him pretty well. He is the founder and CEO of Orca Pacific, which is an Amazon consulting agency. And they made the news recently because they merged with a company called Mighty Hive, which is a digital media consultancy. He's also the host of one of our favorite podcasts. We don't just listen to our own, as narcissistic as we can be at times. And you can actually find a link to his podcast through CPG Guys. We have a list of our preferred podcasts, and you can get it there. But it's called the E-commerce Deep Dive. So please join me in welcoming our guest today, John Ghiorso. John, how are you?
Hey, thanks, Peter. Thanks, Sri. I'm
Welcome
great.
aboard,
how are you guys?
We're awesome. Doing great. We're really appreciative. John's just so the audience knows, John's been really gracious. He's invited us onto his podcast and even to speak at some of the Orca Pacific the e-commerce deep dive webinars. So it was high time that we invited him on. If you listen to our podcast, you know how very much Amazon is a component of what we talk about every day. It's hard not to, given their presence in the marketplace. So having John on to do that and talk about what's going on is going to be really tremendous for us. Let's just start before we get into the questions, John. If you could give us a little bit about yourself and specifically what Orca Pacific does.
Yeah, happy to. Like you said, I'm the founder and CEO of Orca Pacific. I've been doing this for over 10 years, actually 12, 13 years at this point. And Orca Pacific is a full service agency with an exclusive focus on Amazon. So for us, that means we curate and offer services in every facet of the Amazon platform. So we have capabilities in all of the sexy front end stuff, advertising, search and display, SEO, content, merchandising, marketing, you name it. We do a lot of work in the not as sexy, but critically important back end. So operations, planning, forecasting, everything from direct import to FBA to packaging requirements and chargebacks. And then we do a lot in kind of the higher level strategic consulting, pricing strategy, platform strategy, key negotiations and relationships, et cetera. So at this point, we have over 50 people on staff. We're located here in Seattle. So in normal times, walking distance from Amazon's campus. We have people, a lot of former Amazonians, different industry experts, et cetera. And we really work across categories. So consumables, hard lines, soft lines, industrial supplies, you name it, we probably have a client in that category.
Business must be hot these days,
A
given
little
the
bit.
last 6 months.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's been an interesting year for sure. So I will just say it's been interesting for me in particular because everything in hindsight is 2020, right? It all makes sense. Of course, it worked just the way that that it worked. But at the time, I mean, when COVID first started hitting, like we knew that it would cause a big shift to online, like in terms of consumer purchasing. We knew that was not up for debate. But what we didn't know is what would the impact be like on consumer product companies at a macro level, and then what would that do, frankly, to their ability to hire and continue to pay agencies like that. Like that was a big question mark for us. So things I will say things have worked out pretty well. We know that certainly there are brands out there that are feeling a lot of pain, especially if they're more kind of built around traditional channels. But we're doing everything we can to make the bright spot of Amazon even brighter for our clients.
Yeah, John, I'll tell you from my perspective, we saw that happening too at Power Reviews. We had a client as an example, their primary D2C strategy was through Amazon. They were a luggage manufacturer.
Yeah.
So first of all, nobody was traveling.
Yeah.
So nobody wanted to buy luggage. And even if they could buy luggage, there was the essential versus non-essential items at the beginning of the pandemic. And even if they got through that, their factories were closed down. So it was kind of the triple whammy of having to deal with it. I think we're in a better place now, but yeah, it was very uncertain times. Let's double click down on a bunch of stuff that you covered. I'm going to start with, at a high level, why does a brand want to work with a consulting agency like Orca Pacific? And is it more relevant to small brands, or should a big scale brand even be working with an agency? What are you doing for them that makes such a big difference in their success on Amazon?
I think every brand should be working with Orca Pacific.
Good answer.
A controversial statement. No, I'll try to give you my.
Why would it be controversial?
Nothing we talk about is controversial.
I'll try to give you my objective, as objective as I can be view on this.
Fair enough.
So we're very deliberately set up to offer services to both kind of small upstart brands as well as the largest brands on the planet in terms of Amazon services. Now, that looks and feels different depending on where that brand is in terms of their scale, in terms of their life cycle on the platform, et cetera. My opinion on this, to answer kind of at the highest level, like your question of why does an agency make sense in the Amazon ecosystem? I think the reality is Amazon moves incredibly quickly. They innovate incredibly quickly. And as they've gotten bigger, that has grown exponentially in terms of the amount of things that are being innovated on. So the problem of kind of keeping up with Amazon has actually only gotten bigger as Amazon's gotten bigger. So in most cases, and this is not a knock to any CPG company, but Amazon is more innovative and faster moving than any company, including most consumer product companies. So what happens is there's a gap. There's basically a knowledge gap that is ever present. I don't want to say that there aren't CPG companies out there that have completely closed that gap. I think probably there are, where they have an internal team of 16 people and kind of an internal agency and knowledge center, and they've just have it fully dialed in. Of course, that happens, but for 9 out of 10 consumer product brands, they are focused on, as they should be, producing product, R&D, branding, packaging, operations, all of these things that you have to be really, really good at to survive as a consumer product brand. They may have people who know stuff about Amazon, and I'm sure are smart and hardworking, but they don't have the breadth or the depth of knowledge that a group of 50 people who are exclusively focused on a single platform, i.e. us, can have. It's just, at the end of the day, it's kind of a specialization of labor, play, and Amazon is throwing something new at us every day, every week, that we have to go in and figure out. So it's that knowledge gap, and kind of being able to fill that gap in perpetuity is, I think, why we continue to add value into the marketplace.
And John, I believe there's another hidden one that you didn't mention, and I'm surprised you didn't, and that is large brands. I've touched so many of them between PepsiCo and Johnson & Johnson and then Revlon, Elizabeth Arden, is the inability of large brands to be nimble.
Yeah.
Very long decision-making cycles, largely anchored on a P&L shaped by the in-store shelf reset model of every 6 months or so, due to which decision-making over 6 months is perfectly acceptable because it's a model made for that. And everything that you just alluded to, Amazon, based on the fast-moving nature of its technology and its offering to consumers, very nimble, and you can't really keep pace. And one looks to agencies like yours, Orca Pacific, so because you can indeed run the race at 800 miles an hour, and you can bypass a lot of those very long processes, which in a large brand exist for a reason, but at Amazon you can't really play the game that way. And we can go on and on about the competition and things of that nature, but I'll jump to the very next lead up question from what you just said, which is, in an Amazon business, typically one has a choice of a 1P business model, which is, I would say, not a whole lot different from working with a Walmart in the in-store model. You have a JBP and you can have a QBR. And by the way, if you want to have one with Amazon, you can get your way there, because having worked with Eric French and Jeff Wilkie in the past, all that is very doable if you seek it. And but the 3P model is radically different. And brands go through this metamorphosis of starting on 1P because it's just straight. You can take what you've been doing for decades and bring it over. Now, when I say that, I also say that with a little bit of chagrin, because working 1P with Amazon and the metrics and the rules of engagement are not the exact same, but for the most part, they are. And then you start thinking about the price equity problem of EDLP, and that's what usually leads you to a 3P business model. It's usually brand protection equity. So in your mind, Orca Pacific, how does it navigate around 1P and 3P? Do you guys advise brands between when to do 1P, 3P? Is there ever an opportunity for any given company or a set of brands to have a hybrid strategy as well?
Yeah, so this is an ever-present conversation that we're having with our clients, and I think it gets dramatically oversimplified in the marketplace, in kind of this marketplace of thought leaders and consultants and agencies. I think there tends to be a lot of kind of like oversimplified one-size-fits-all messaging. For every brand, the answer of should I be 1P, should I be 3P, should I be hybrid is going to be different. It's going to be different based on the catalog size, based on their operational capabilities, based on how they're handling channel management, and are they handling it at all, and where their price points are. It's going to be different based on the presence of distributors and other third-party sellers in the space. So it is a complicated conversation. It also, by the way, sort of even asking the question presumes that the brand actually has a choice, which is also becoming a greater issue, I will say, in terms of their actual ability to decide, oh yeah, 1P, I don't like it, let's go 3P. That seems like a better option. Sure, okay, but is Amazon going to block that? Like, can you actually do
You'll
that?
be surprised, John, how many large brands think it's a switch.
Yeah, you just port it over. Yeah. So even assuming that you can do this, I think a lot of large, high affinity brands that are 1P tend to view 3P as kind of this magic bullet panacea. Grass is always greener. And by the way, I'm not saying that it isn't sometimes. It certainly can be the right move for a business. But I've seen a lot of situations where we've run the analysis and it's going to be less profitable and a lot more, just from a pure margin perspective, and a lot more difficult to manage in terms of, operational, in terms of customer service, in terms of planning, et cetera. So there's a lot that should go into the decision, and it is a big decision. That is the other thing I would say. Like, this is if you're running a $40 million business, a $70 million business on Amazon, and you decide, let's just, move over to 3P, it's a big deal. And if you don't do it the right way, it's going to cause you a lot of headache and lost business. So.
Thank you, John. That's great. By the way, I should tell our audience, we've been using a lot of acronyms lately, and particularly in this episode, we're going to do it. So just like we have a preferred podcast list, we're also going to create a industry term glossary we're going to put on cpgguys.com. I think that'll get a lot of attention.
Yeah, that's
because we're throwing around a lot today, and so I'm going to ask you about some of those acronyms. So sure. If a brand has chosen by their choice or by Amazon's choice that they're 3P, they have different fulfillment solutions. So can you tell us what the difference is between FBA and FBM, and how do you counsel your clients on those fulfillment options? And we've also started to hear that if it's FBA, there's a 15% sales or a tax on the sales and the fees. Is that true, or is it a myth? And if so, how do you advise your brands on navigating that?
Yeah, so actually, let me quickly just define some kind of semantics between the 1P and the 3P side.
Yep.
So we use this term 1P and 3P just because people have heard probably different terms. So 1P synonymous with Vendor Central, which is the portal you access 1P, synonymous with first party and retail. All of those terms mean the same thing in the Amazon ecosystem. 3P is third party marketplace, is kind of all of those terms, and Seller Central, all of those terms are synonymous. So to answer your question, there's really kind of three fundamental ways to fulfill product to the customer on the 3P, i.e. marketplace side of the business. So there's FBA, there's FBM, and there's Seller Fulfilled Prime. So, which is a kind of an offshoot actually of one of them. So FBA is the one that probably most brands are going to be the most familiar with. So this is fulfilled by Amazon. This is where you, as the seller, you send product to Amazon, they warehouse it, but you still own it. And then you are selling it to the customer, the end customer. But ultimately, Amazon is handling all of the forward and reverse logistics, shipping, and customer service. So that tends to be the best solution because you automatically get a Prime badge on the product, and it then competes evenly with any other Prime offer on the platform, assuming that the retail price is the same. The other option is FBM. So this is fulfilled by merchant. So this is essentially drop shipping. So this is where you're shipping, the sale is happening through the Amazon platform, but you're shipping direct to the customer. You're dealing with customer service. You're dealing with forward and reverse logistics, or forward and reverse fulfillment. And effectively kind of running your own retail operation for all intents and purposes. There is an offshoot of FBM, which is Seller Fulfilled Prime. This is basically where, as a seller, if you are good enough, and you have to be very good, to be able to ship a product in 24 hours and ship it with traditionally 2-day freight, but now it's going to be 1-day freight pretty soon. You are able to hit consistently a Prime promise, and then Amazon will badge that offer with a Prime delivery promise to the customer, even though it is coming directly from your warehouse.
And how does a brand actually do that? You said that they can prove it. What do they have to do to show Amazon that they're able to achieve that level of expectation?
So first of all, you have to apply for the program. So you have to apply to even get access to being tested. Then you go through a testing period. It's all, of course, it's Amazon. It's all metrics driven, right? And when I say you have to be really good, I mean, if you miss 2 out of like 10,000 shipments, they cut you off. I mean, wow. They take that Prime promise extremely seriously. So it's you basically have to operate with 0 defects. And then once you're through the trial period, you get that Prime badge, and then it's basically yours to lose. The big change there is that Amazon announced, and this was a while ago, pre-COVID, they announced they were moving Prime from 2-day to 1-day. That was sort of a phase change. So for anyone living in an urban area, you probably saw all of a sudden a lot of products had a 1-day promise, but some still had 2. So it wasn't the prime promise. It wasn't automatic overnight shipping, but it was starting to get rolled in. Amazon will eventually get to 1-day shipping, right, on everything. That will eventually become the prime promise. So what you're going to see now is these brands that had to ship in 2 days or had to deliver in 2 days now have to deliver in 1 day. And that means, by the way, that typically, you know, what you could have done with maybe 3, 4, 5 warehouses strategically located around the country, you now need like 15 or 20. Because all of a sudden, you know, 2 states away, 3 states away is not close enough. You need, you know, 1 or 2 states away, and you're to handle overnight shipping without just killing yourself on freight costs. So anyway, I know that's a tangent, but there's a lot going on there. So
you know, John, I can tell you this: I moved from Chicago to New Haven, Connecticut, and up until about 3 weeks ago, my prime delivery window is more like 7 days. So if you can get me to 1, I'll be very happy. The one thing I wanted you to touch on was this what we mentioned, which is the FBA sales tax. Is that 15%? Is that true to your knowledge? And
so the way Amazon makes money on the marketplace is they charge a commission. They charge a platform fee. So that's a platform fee based on the retail of the product, and it ranges between 8 and 15%. It is fixed by category. So it's not like some brands pay this and some brands pay this. It's just a fixed rate. This category is at 8, this category is at 10, this category is at 15, and it is what it is. Everybody pays the same amount, whether you sell 1 or, you know, 100,000.
When we've talked to a lot of brands, what we understand is the benefit you get and the services you get by doing the FBA as a 3P are just so tremendous compared to trying to go at it alone that you'd be a fool not to take advantage of it.
Yeah. So my advice is, if you're going to go the marketplace 3P route, the only reason I would not use FBA, so it's an exception to the rule thing, right? The only reason I would not use it is if you are so sophisticated, if you have such an extensive dropship network, you're already doing it at scale. You know, you're a Casper mattress or whoever, that you can do FBM and get a Prime badge, and you can do it more efficiently, then by all means do that. Or if you have a super long tail catalog and you just can't afford to send 7,000 different SKUs into FBA, maybe you send your top 300, but the rest of them, you're going to have to find a different fulfillment method because you're going to get killed on just the storage costs. You know, if you're selling 3 units a year of something, you're never going to be able to justify having that inventory held in Amazon's fulfillment.
So John, that actually creates an interesting, I don't know if dilemma is the right word, but that's what the outcome sounds like. So if you're a large brand, you're going to have thousands of SKUs. This is who you are. It's your DNA. It's in your bloodstream. If you're a digital native, like you said, FBM, that's how you incubated via D2C. You've already acquired fulfillment expertise. Customer service is your wheelhouse. You understand what to do with all that stuff because you've been collecting data for quite some time and optimizing it. Now, if you're a large brand, what I would generally say is, if you're DST, which is you're in the business of merchandising in store and you control end-to-end fulfillment, you're already going to have each picking inside your warehouse, because that's how you fulfill DST products. Pepsi's, Cokes, these are examples of DST. Very fast-moving food and bev tends to be DST. But if you're not going to have each picking skill sets at all in your warehouse. And trying to take on FBM would actually be very hard and a massive CapEx supply chain investment. But on the same side, if you have thousands of SKUs and you got to ship them all to FBA, you're back with that dilemma. So at some point, John, we should come back to what do you do in that case. And Peter, I can also confirm with the current brand I'm working with, ZenFuel, that the so-called tax is also, aka in simple English grammar, called a listing fee. And in the health and wellness supplements area that I'm currently working on, it is the high 15%, because it is an area that a lot of folks are focused on from Amazon from a consumer perspective. That's it, John. I'm going to switch us quite a bit over here from the world of fulfillment, FBA, FBM, etc., to media, to a wonderful world of media, aka my favorite topic. But a growth engine for companies like yours and a growth engine for brands and brand equity building in general. And for the longest time, large brands struggle to understand the role of Amazon. And as a result, ACOS became a metric of choice for brands. And brands actually coached Amazon that that is the metric Amazon AMG folks should be focused on to sell back, because agencies historically have managed media as a percent line item of the P&L. My humble take on that is ACOS is obviously a metric you want to get to once you achieve scale on Amazon, because you want to keep optimizing your ROAS and things of that nature. But when you start a business on Amazon, if you're using ACOS as your metric, I think you've already started on the back foot, because you're trying to manage to a number in terms of your audience and reach. And what ends up happening in that case is it becomes a trade kind of conversation with sales folks, as opposed to where media should correctly belong, including search, which is really in the hands of the marketing team. What's your viewpoint on that? I mean, I feel having ACOS is really performance marketing, and moving it to below the line is really growth marketing, which is what a company should be focused on from day one.
Yeah, I mean, the way we look at ACOS and its inverse ROAS is that it is a valuable metric, but it is only part of the story. And if you focus myopically on it, you will miss the bigger picture of what's happening. And be very wary of any agency who's obsessing over ACOS, or any software platform that's going to optimize around ACOS. I'll give you a very simple example. If I'm selling, insert big brand here, Tide. If I'm selling Tide, which I know has a lot of brand affinity, I can get a 2% ACOS. Easy. The way I do that is I dump all of the spend into Tide keywords, Tide laundry detergent, Tide pods, Tide
branded keywords,
Tide free and clear, whatever it is. Guess what? Your ACOS is going to be through the roof, and you are going to sell 0 incremental product. So yeah, it has to be looked at as part of the story. It is an efficiency metric, but it is one out of many metrics. And by the way, to even expand this further, I would say the entire data set that is provided via Amazon advertising, that alone also doesn't tell the full story. It tells a lot more of the story. Even then, you're not seeing the full picture, because you're not getting the second order effects of what happens with organic search rank as a result of media. So there's all these really important second order effects on a business, which to your point is why just focusing on real time, direct attribution, again, important for sure. Like, you want to sell more product, you should be looking at that as part of the story, but it's definitely not the full story. And the brands that understand that, those are the brands that grow 100%.
Do you find a lot of those brands in the businesses that you work with and brands that you work with? Do you see a lot of them coming to you all and not having the ACOS conversation as a starting point?
We see it all, but I will tell you generally, I think the marketplace is starting to understand this.
It's good
3
to hear.
years ago, everyone just wanted to talk about ACOS. What, this agency's gonna get me 4%. What can you get me? And it's like, well, I mean, it's a stockbroker that tells you that, they can get you a 30% year-over-year return is like, run the other direction. If someone,
I love Bernie Madoff. I thought he was great.
Yeah.
The fact that he ran his whole business on that AS400 under his desk, brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna take that statement and put a general call out to the CPG industry and brands in general, which is very straightforward. As we continue this dialogue, is ACOS, it's a mere metric in the scheme of advertising and marketing and search. Do not please, a humble please, start dialogues on managing your media mix with ACOS as the leading metric, because you've already started on the back foot. And I think, John, you're vehemently agreeing on this one.
Yes, absolutely.
So, John, we've talked a lot philosophically about things. We've discussed some acronyms. Let's use a case study. You've got some on your site, so I'd love you to give us an example of how you worked with a brand. The more commoditized, the better, to deliver exceptional results for them.
For a commodity product in particular, the burden of success shifts even more onto how effectively you execute on the Amazon platform. For example, the inverse of that, right, would be like Apple or Bose or a very, very differentiated IP-driven product. Not that they do a good job on Amazon, but you could probably do a pretty subpar job on Amazon and still sell a lot, right? Because you're going to be able to just draft off all this other differentiation you built. For a commoditized product, all of then the burden of success shifts onto how well you pull the triggers on Amazon and how well you execute. So it's going to come down to basically out Amazoning the competition. If you want to kind of start at the highest level, what you're ultimately going to be talking about is maximizing glance views, both organic and paid, maximizing your conversion rate of those glance views, which by the way equals sales, and making sure that the product is always in stock with a prime offer to take advantage of those glance views and that conversion rate. So when I think about those three big buckets, fundamentally glance views is going to come down to a paid media strategy. The organic glance view conversation becomes a bit more complicated because there's a lot of things that filter into that, but the big gas pedal for driving more impressions, driving more glance views is media and paid media. So then the question becomes, how do you do that in an incremental, additive, sustainable way? The conversion rate is going to come down to content. So content best practice is making sure that the customer is receiving all the information they need to be able to make a confident purchase. And then, of course, you want to make sure that the product is in stock, what Amazon calls retail ready. So basically in stock and available at the right price with a prime offer, et cetera. And that's all going to come down to operational efficiency. So when we work with a brand, and I think Mark Hall is a good example of this, traditionally, we work in what we call a full service capacity. So our thesis is that Amazon is a holistic platform. You can't have one person steering the car, but no one's paying attention to the pedals. It's not going to work. Like, you need to have operational excellency paired with a sustainable, sophisticated paid media strategy, paired with best-in-class content that is optimized for Amazon SEO for the A9 algorithm. So, basically when we work with them, we put all of those things in place in the right order at the right time to basically outdo their competition, right? So grew them in terms of PageRank, organic, grew paid impressions at a sustainable rate, converted more shoppers to purchase, and made sure that when we did all that, the product was available and in stock and had a prime offer.
And John, I want to therefore do another call out to CPG, large CPG brands, kind of the world that I've touched for quite some time in my career before now focusing on the smaller ones, which is, if you heard John speak for the last few minutes, there was a hidden, clear message in there, which is if you want to win on Amazon, you have to be able to do this end to end, which is you got to master the flywheel across the board. Every piece of the flywheel, and how I interpret that is the flywheel is not directly proportional to your media strategy or your operational strategy. It's everything, seed to innovation, to launch, to scaling, to distribution and fulfillment. Now let's flip that a bit on the large brand side, which is a large brand traditionally outsources its fulfillment or owns its fulfillment up to a retailer and outsources it to distributors who then redistribute it, causing that outsourcing process to extend even further. Then when you look at the media side, there are many agencies in the mix. The creative agency could be different from the buying agency, which is different from the execution agency, which also will vary in a company by brand. And as you start looking at this complex mix, and then customer teams have completely separated based on the customer you call on. And when you start looking across the diaspora, the ownership is so flattened across the board. It's very hard for a large brand to grasp the concept of you got to do it all on Amazon and own it end to end to really get the maximum value. And that's why I feel it's best for brands to start with an agency who can manage your seller central account just completely end to end across the board. So I'm going to jump now, John, to Prime Day. Obviously, Prime Day in the last few years has become a day that brands look forward to in many ways. Small brand, large brand, really doesn't matter. If you're launching a brand on Prime Day, it could be a mega bonanza day as long as you bring the investments with it. It could be a day which creates a permanent inflection point, not just on Amazon for your brand, but in digital selling and shopping forever. From a consumer perspective, it is the day of deals. This year, Prime Day is 3 months late in October, which is like the setup for the holiday season. And then you have Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Does Prime Day lose its sex appeal and value this year in 2020? Or is this an amazing strategy of the setup and then the dunk?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, it's completely different as a shopping holiday because of the change in time. So yeah, it's called the same thing, but I mean, it went from a summer, you know, retail is pretty soft in the summer, so let's kind of, you know, juice up this period of time and help move into back to school holiday to basically an early start to holiday shopping. And those are two very different things. Now, the execution of it compared to years past will be fairly similar in terms of what the deals look like, and a lot of Amazon owned devices and Amazon media. When I say media, you know, movies, music, etc. So it's going to look similar in terms of execution, but the product mix is, I think, going to be very different in terms of what brands want to promote, what Amazon wants to promote. You know, we used to joke that that Black Friday, what used to be called Black Friday, had just become November because people started doing deals earlier and earlier. I think because of Prime Day now, what used to be called Holiday Peak is just going to be called all of Q4. So I really see it, and the way we're looking at this as it is an early start to Q4. I think that the vast majority of the shopping is going to be early Christmas, other holiday shopping that's going on in Prime Day, and that's how we're positioning it with our clients. So I do think it could be very big. I think it's possible that it breaks the Amazon system to some degree again, so that we start seeing more delays like we did in April, May. I don't think it will be as bad as that, but I have a quick piece of advice, which is this Q4, make sure as a brand you have a diversified distribution strategy, that you're not completely reliant on getting product into an Amazon fulfillment center in the middle of Q4 or even the beginning of Q4, and that you're not completely reliant on Amazon getting that product from a fulfillment center to the customer, because that could cause you problems. I mean, we're as bullish, let me say it this way, we're as bullish on Prime Day this year as we were in years past. I think the dynamic and the positioning of it, though, is very different.
Gotcha. What I hear in that assessment is expect the unexpected.
Yeah, that's why if you hear me hedging a little bit, it's because, I mean, we all love to be an oracle, right? But like, there is a lot of just new, unprecedented stuff happening all at the same time here.
So let's push the envelope a little bit more, John. The pandemic is still going on. We don't know what's going to happen through the balance of this year. There are a couple of things that you're advising to your brand partners, clients, on how to focus on risk mitigation for the rest of this pandemic.
One I just mentioned, diversified distribution strategy, fulfillment strategy. I think that's important. I would say the general concept of flexibility and nimbleness is really important. You know, it's the volatility has leveled off a little bit since COVID first hit and the whole country was panicking. But when that happened, we saw the amount of change happen in a day that we would have seen in a month, and the amount of change happen in a month that we would have seen happen in a year. So if a brand was sort of checking in once a week, you now need to be checking in once a day. If they were checking in once a day, you need to be checking in every hour. And that seems maybe like a kind of a high level, like, well, of course thing, but like, I mean, in terms of what are you doing with your ad strategy? What are you doing with content? What are you doing with SEO? COVID has represented the largest shift in consumer behavior in modern history. I mean, just in terms of the way people buy, what they're buying, how they're buying it, what they need and what they don't need, and how they're looking for it, what terms they're using to shop for it. And a lot of that volatility, it's certainly not normalized. It's still much more volatile than it has been. I mean, all of a sudden everyone's looking for bread makers, and then that stops. So, you know, they were looking for a hand sanitizer, and then it's bread makers, and then it's the next thing. And people are still in this weird situation. And I think for a lot of people, celebrating the holidays is going to be different this year as well. And you never know what's going to happen with the pandemic. It could get worse, it could get better, and that could be different by region. So, so even those factors need to be considered. So, so nimbleness, ability to react quickly. Just do not let your eye off the ball. You know, brick and mortar, by definition, is more stable. You know, the physical product is sitting on a shelf, and the product next to it is sitting on the shelf next to it, and the prices are what they are. You know, this is as volatile as the stock market. It's a massively dynamic, complex, you know, marketplace. And yeah, anyway, so.
Also, the cat and mouse game of crapping or delisting a product on Amazon, much harder to do in brick and mortar, because you have to take it out of thousands of stores and you got to plan for a date, a replacement for the facing. At Amazon, you can just do that.
Yeah,
so,
and actually, I would say, yeah, really paying attention to profitability. There are multiple different triggers and downside impacts to a business on Amazon. It's actually a more nuanced conversation than it used to be. It used to be your item was on or it was crapped out. It was sort of binary. That's no longer the case. You could have an item that is not crapped out, so it's still being sold, but your direct fulfillment offer gets suppressed. Your ability to advertise it gets suppressed. You're not completely underwater on a profitability standpoint where it would get fully deprecated, but you're low margin. So that there's now a range of low margin implications, which can also negatively impact your business.
Yeah, what I found is vendor managers have now got the ability to keep it from auto crapping, yep, which is going on. But I would sniff and tell you at the end of the quarter, an ask is coming.
Oh,
so
yeah. Oh, yeah.
That said, I'm going to move to another area, which I believe nimbleness is the key to being successful and optimizing. And that's the area of user-generated content. I mean, no secret here. The whole world now knows and accepts Amazon as the trusted partner for consumers in terms of ratings and reviews, and also as a place to go hunt, dig, find product, as well as once you find a product, do price shopping, as well as really understand socially what other consumers may be saying, look for pictures, the entire plethora across the board. But all of these, a very important one is ratings and reviews. How does Orca Pacific help new brands get the right ones? And then do you guys help manage ratings and reviews in terms of frequently answered questions? And then when there are reviews that may not be the best ones on planet Earth, how do you mitigate those? These are all traditionally, again, Achilles heels of large brands, because we've never had such ecosystems until the last 7-8 years. And what's Orca Pacific's role, and what do you advise brands in this space?
Yeah, so we do a couple things when it comes to reviews. On the review generation side, our opinion on this is we want to play by the rules. We recommend our clients play by the rules. There's a lot of, you know, gray market, black market ways of producing reviews. There are sanctioned ways of generating more reviews. Amazon programs.
Could you highlight a couple of those for
Sure.
the audience?
Yeah, so there's basically two Amazon programs to generate reviews. There's something called the Early Reviewer Program, and then there's something called the Vine Program, so like Grapevine. Early Reviewer, I believe right now you could get 5 reviews basically before you launch a product, and then Vine you can get up to 30. It's basically you're sending free samples.
Traditionally you get about 20 consistently out of 30, correct?
It's an 80 to 90% redemption rate usually, okay, unless your product's really boring.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, yeah.
Napkins.
Toilet paper, well, pre-COVID toilet paper, you know, hot commodity now. But yeah, napkins, good example. Like maybe 60% redemption rate there, but pretty much anything else you're gonna have close to 90 or more. So those are the Amazon programs, and then there's a couple third-party programs that don't technically violate Amazon's rules. Most of those exist on the third-party marketplace side of the business, and they're basically they solicit feedback. So you're able to, if you thread the needle and don't violate terms, you're able to solicit objective feedback from customers that have bought your products to get reviews on the platform. So that's review generation. We also monitor reviews and customer questions on a regular basis. We think it's really important for brands to respond to all negative reviews and all questions. If you don't respond to a question as a brand, it's open. Anyone else can respond.
Oh, I would say shame on you. You're being too kind.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, I mean, but I guess what my point is, someone's going to respond, and it's going to be, you know, Bob in Minneapolis, who has nothing, no experience with your product, is going to guess at the response. You want the, you know, brand representative getting back to them. So we monitor reviews and customer feedback on a regular basis. We don't respond directly. You know, we've just found that, like, our goal, we want to do everything we can for our clients, but we've just found that that's a customer service thing. We're never going to have that intimate level of, hey, the plug didn't work this way and what happened with the button. Like, that's customer service. You know, that should be the brand customer service team responding to those issues.
So John, this ratings and reviews, because it's such an important one, again, for brands when they start up and start to grow their ratings and reviews, which does impact the SEO, kind of quote unquote, the black box algorithm of your glance views, etc.
Yep.
Let's say a brand has a good social presence and a good social media handle on Instagram, as an example, or maybe even Facebook, or the variety of platforms that exist today. Is it okay for a brand, or would you ever recommend, you know, they partner with you to offline work on social media to generate reviews, or is that not okay?
It's a gray area.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's, you know, I think it's, the goal should be to kind of maximize the impact you can have by playing within the rules, right? Like, so you want
to two programs.
Well, yeah. And I mean, there are some external opportunities, you know, if you have a mailing list and you're soliciting feedback in an unbiased kind of, you know, you're not giving product away for free, you're not paying people for reviews, you're not doing any of that. That skirts the line a bit more. But, you know, so there are some things that can be done that are outside of those specific to Amazon programs. But yeah, you know, unfortunately, because there's been so much kind of negative press around review manipulation on the platform, Amazon's really tightened up their guidelines.
Yeah, it's crazy, John. There's not a day that goes by via direct messaging on Facebook or Instagram I don't get 2-3 of these from new brands that are getting introduced all the time on the third party. They typically tend to be, I've noticed, FBM. I rarely see the FBA ones, and they're usually always trying to induce a review with like a gift card. There's a financial offset. And I think a clever way they're trying to do the financial offset is a coupon code to buy the product for free on Amazon. So a transaction's taking place, there's no gift card involved. But I agree with you that these are like the gray area ways to do it. And sooner or later, I see Amazon closing the door on those. So
it is a cat and mouse game. You're right. You know, there's also a lot of stuff that goes beyond review manipulation where you're manipulating the algorithm. So you're basically, what you're doing is you're funneling traffic that looks to be non-paid
glance views
through the platform. So Amazon goes, oh, all of a sudden a ton of customers are looking at this. It bumps it up to number one. Yeah, there's a ton of that kind of, you know, platform hacking stuff that goes on. But, you know,
I would imagine, John, all of those are like short-term little inflection points. None of those hacks are sustainable.
No, and you know, if you're anything other than a fly-by-night organization, like, you just shouldn't be doing that. Forget about, you know, ethical considerations. It's gonna impact you in a negative way at some point. It's not worth it. So
great advice.
Yeah.
Sri, are you amazed that I've been able to bite my tongue through this entire dialogue?
The man from Power Reviews has not said a word during ratings and reviews.
I'll say a couple things. One, there's a big story actually. Someone just forwarded me today about some paid review generation going on over in London at Amazon in the UK. So it's still a hot topic. You know, we at Power Reviews, we have a component of our platform, and I've told you this before, John. it's called Shared Amazon, and if someone's writing an organic review on a brand's website, non-incentivized, completely compliant with Amazon's terms and conditions, we can give those consumers writing a review an opportunity to share that to Amazon by bringing them right over through the ASIN to the corresponding writer review page, copying what they wrote on the brand page and allowing them to paste that on. Completely compliant with Amazon, and because it's organic, it's coming through that way. It's not hitting that all of a sudden 6,000 reviews for a product come through, and it's not gonna set Amazon on fire and have them question it. The social media one's also interesting. Yeah, if you've got a great CRM database and you've got a big social media following, you can ask them to just, hey, we'd love your feedback, and if you want, you can direct them to Amazon. But the risk you run of doing it that way is, again, to your point, they see all of a sudden the throttle just go crazy. And it's going to trip it, and it's going to stop the reviews from coming through. So it is a bit of a risk to do that, but I can understand, because everyone understands. That's the secret sauce of Amazon. They don't talk about it on investor calls. They don't talk about it too much, but honestly, if you're sitting, even if I'm sitting in a physical store and I want to learn about products, 70% of the time, consumers are opening up their Amazon app and they're learning about it there. So it has such reach. And I tell other retailers all the time, if you're not generating content, there's this company in Seattle that's more than happy to give it to your consumer, even as they're walking your physical stores, and they'll pluck them right out of the purchase cycle. So beware. So let's move back to your business. You recently announced a merger with a company called Mighty Hive. We can go into a lot of details, and I know there are probably some things you can and can't talk about, but what I think you can talk about is, what do you see the value proposition, the added value that you're going to bring your existing clients by having the resources of Mighty Hive within your house?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. So when we first started having these conversations, exploring the potential, there were a lot of kind of 1 + 1 = 3 opportunities that we saw. And by the way, we are merging with Mighty Hive. Mighty Hive is under the S4 Capital umbrella, and the other big side of that business is Media Monks. And Media Monks is one of the most sophisticated global asset creative production houses there is right now. So there's a ton of opportunities with both sides of that business, actually. I think that, we've operated for a long time with really an exclusive focus on Amazon, knowing that most of the success that a brand is going to have on Amazon, either it happens within the walls of Amazon. So I think we're going to see that start to change. Certainly there's plenty of examples already of brands using social to drive traffic and other programmatic to drive traffic and doing other things, right? So it's not like, I don't mean like this isn't happening today, it is. But I think we're going to see the trend shift more and more to Amazon is a piece of a more holistic kind of digital and e-commerce strategy. And that those connection points between Amazon and Google and Amazon and Facebook and Amazon and creative production and Amazon and what you're doing with influencers or celebrities, those connection points I think are going to become increasingly important, both on the side of the actual work that's being done, as well as the data that's being produced and looked at as a result. So ultimately us plugging into this larger organization that has really best-in-class services in all of these different platforms, elements of programmatic, elements of data, elements of creative, I think position us to offer a much more sort of holistic, unified approach to commerce, of which Amazon is still a super important piece. And, I don't want to overpromise. There's a lot of work to do to actually like connect these things, right? But I think that is, that's a really important sort of, I would say, future trend in the marketplace. And we want to be there at the cutting edge as those conversations start to become kind of more holistic and go from the director of e-commerce to the CMO and the CEO level.
Swami says Orca Pacific will be on the Walmart 3P bandwagon early next year. I'm just kidding, John.
I don't know.
So,
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, obviously, you know, I think like we very deliberately made a decision years ago to be exclusively Amazon focused. Not gonna lie, I still see so much opportunity with just Amazon, not just for us as an agency, but just for brands in general. I mean, it's very...
And I will be the last person that won't concur with you on that one, having touched about 30 of those multi-billion-dollar brands, leave alone mid-tier and small. There's plenty, like such a plethora of room to grow. At some point, one could write a thesis on it, which leads me to your podcast, which is the e-commerce deep dive podcast. So could you explain for our users what they can expect if they were to subscribe for that podcast? Would it be everything Amazon around the surround sound 360 of everything we discussed, or this new model where you're looking to eventually evolve to, which is a 360 of omni-channel in general, which may have other retail, but not just retail, but also the anchors, search, content, how you get the right assortment, like user experience, D2C perhaps in the future? Like what should one expect on the podcast?
Yeah, so there's a reason we called it e-commerce deep dive and not Amazon deep dive. And we very deliberately wanted to actually zoom out beyond Amazon. So for me, I really like learning about, you know, just things in our general sort of e-commerce space. So it was an opportunity for me to go out and interview world's leading experts in all of these different facets of e-commerce and digital marketing that, of course, like interact with Amazon, but are outside of Amazon. So we've, you know, we've had Peter on talking about reviews. We've had experts talking about China commerce, talking about Walmart.com, talking about, you know, social channels and them getting into commerce. So the goal is really to kind of zoom out, go outside of just this Amazon focus that I tend to have, you know, day in and day out, and talk about kind of this emerging world of, even I think e-commerce is starting to become an outdated term, although still the term that's being used the most, but it's just commerce at some point. So, you know, digital commerce and what that looks like and where it's headed. And it's fairly like, it's high level intentionally, you know, it's a lot of kind of high level conversations with thought leaders around the industry. So it's been a ton of fun.
That's great. And I would encourage all of our audience to go to your favorite podcast platform and look for e-commerce deep dive, or go to our website, cptguys.com, where you'll find all of our audio podcasts, our video. You'll also find a great document, which is our favorite podcast. E-commerce deep dive is right up there. You download the PDF, you click on the icon of this podcast, it'll take you right to the Apple page, click subscribe. So I want to remind all our audience that also, if you like what you're hearing, that we encourage you to go to tinyurl.com/Apple CPT podcast and leave us a rating. This has been really interesting for us, John. You said you started your podcast because you wanted to learn more. That's really what Shri and I did as well. We're incredibly grateful to have guests like you on and to share with our audience. We're going to work on that glossary. We heard a lot of terms today. I think, Shri, that's what I'll be doing over the weekend.
If we didn't tell the audience, who we have a lot of listeners also from the offline world, what crap means, I think there's going to be a little bit of a black mark here on us permanently. So I'm going to just put it out there. Crap is can't realize a profit. That's
you don't want the you know, adult rating on your podcast.
Exactly.
So.
NC-17.
Yeah, exactly.
So John, thank you for coming on. Tell our listeners again how they can find more about your business and your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So, probably 3 places to kind of find us. So the first is podcast, you know, any podcast app, e-commerce deep dive. Second is our website. It is OrcaPac, ORCAPAC.com. You can find out more about what we do, and we have a good knowledge center there where we have videos and articles and all kinds of stuff about Amazon. And then LinkedIn, if you want to connect with me, if you want to follow our company. I spend probably more time than I should on that platform. So that's always a good place to reach out as well.
You're just like us, John. Shri and I do the same thing. Shri, wow, another humdinger. Great insight and education for our audience. Thanks again for doing this with me.
Thank you, Peter, as always. And I do want to remind our audience of one little thing. You'll be able to find John's podcast from Orca Pacific e-commerce deep dive in the comment section of this post.
Yeah, we'll put that in the notes section of this, and on all our posts, you'll be able to find that. So with that, thank you, John. Thank you, Shri, and to our audience, looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Thanks, and have a great day.